Hey folks, Elizabeth Selick LaRue Esquire here. And I am going to do a voiceover for this article that I published on January 2nd, 2025. This article got more attention both on Medium and Substack than many articles that I've written. And I suspect that had to do in some respect with the date right after the new year, when people were sort of post-holiday and grappling with the reality that we were walking into an inauguration of 47. But it's also a very useful article, and I'm going to record a voiceover for those who prefer to hear me say it. So, without further ado, 3 things you must do if you want to emigrate from the U.S. Real talk that most expat writers don't mention. By me. As someone who emigrated from the U.S. as a self-employed consultant with a legal background and who is now providing services to help people conscientiously emigrate from the U.S., I find myself laughing when I read some of the popular, yet incredibly oversimplified articles about becoming an expat, digital nomad, or retiree abroad. You know the articles I'm referring to. 5 countries you can move to right now are the clickbaity headlines, and no attention is paid to who the you is or whether or not those countries actually want you with your particular circumstances. Forget about whether people with your specific identities will be safe, comfortable, or welcomed in the countries being touted as the best for U.S. expats. Quite frankly, these articles appear to be aimed at some generic, well-resourced, independently wealthy, healthy, white, male, heterosexual individual who has 0 circumstances that require further consideration. They also hardly ever meaningfully acknowledge or grapple with the increasing backlash globally to people from the U.S. treating the world as their personal playgrounds and driving up costs of living while contributing little to local economies. These articles also often border on dishonesty. The information about income requirements is frequently outdated. I saw one just recently, published in Forbes, that listed income thresholds for temporary residency visas in Mexico that were applicable in 2022 and have since risen twice. Crucial eligibility criteria is left unmentioned, for example, age restrictions for visas aimed at retirees, and overall, these articles paint an unrealistic picture of unfettered accessibility to the rest of the world with no caveats. I'll be the one to break it to you. Not everyone in the world is clamoring to accept U.S. citizens as immigrants, and there are certain limitations that I have never seen mentioned in these popular blog pieces. And if you're a person in the U.S. considering emigrating, I would hate for you to do something that could jeopardize your plans simply because you didn't know it could. So, without further ado, here are three things you must do if you plan to emigrate from the U.S. in the future. Number 1, stay out of trouble. Many countries, especially those in Europe, require that prospective immigrants to their sovereign nations present a criminal background check report. For example, Spain's digital nomad visa, Iceland's volunteer residency visa, and even Canada's basic visitor visa require disclosure of and/or proof of no criminal convictions in order to qualify. Of course, where direct evidence of a conviction-free pass is not required and an applicant must only attest to not having convictions, applicants who are discovered to have lied on their visa applications can have those visas revoked. Additionally, criminal background checks submitted in connection with a visa generally need to be no older than 3 to 6 months at the time of application. If you know that you want to leave the U.S., you're going to need to stay out of trouble. Number 2. Stay or get healthy. Like it or not, many visa programs require that applicants submit a clean bill of health, so to speak. Is this discriminatory against folks with disabilities or chronic health conditions? Yes. Unfair? Yes. Nevertheless, some visa programs require it. having arrived at a policy conclusion that the risk of burdening their country's healthcare systems with U.S. expats is not in their best interests. Where medical certificates are required along with visa applications, they often need to be even more recent than criminal background checks, sometimes no older than 30 days at the time of the application. Additionally, many countries' visa programs require that applicants and their family members have private health insurance coverage that will work in the destination country. So no, you most likely cannot rely on the Affordable Care Act or your employer's U.S.-based insurance plan to meet this criteria, even if they have authorized you to work remotely. By the way, they must authorize it. You will almost invariably need to provide proof that your employer allows you to work from the country in question if you are applying for a visa associated with remote work. The costs of private in-country or international travel plans vary widely, but it is important to note that they might not cover pre-existing conditions and they are not required to approve anyone. In any event, it's a good idea to consider your health status and whether the country you plan to move to will be able to meet your healthcare needs. Also note that just because a country has an excellent public healthcare system doesn't mean you will have access to it. Oftentimes, expat or digital nomad articles will applaud certain public healthcare systems but fail to mention that they are not available to anyone who hasn't obtained legal permanent residency in the country. Usually a high bar to meet, especially if you don't already live there. Read the fine print. Number 3, have a solid amount of savings. Although there are visas for temporary residency for which immigrants can qualify based on income thresholds alone, for example, in Mexico, these thresholds are subject to change. They are commonly increased to align with annual increases in minimum wage. If your immigration plans are delayed and you plan to demonstrate your eligibility through income, what happens if you no longer qualify because you don't earn enough monthly money to meet the new thresholds? It's unlikely that employers will provide you with a raise in order to meet immigration requirements, even if they are flexible enough to permit internationally based remote work. By having substantial savings, you may be able to troubleshoot this particular issue. Again, looking at Mexico, those who are unable to meet or prove income thresholds, for example, freelancers who don't receive pay stubs, can meet the financial solvency threshold through savings in bank accounts. While these amounts also increase annually, potential immigrants have more control over how much savings they accumulate versus how much they are paid by their employers. Additionally, it's always smart to have money on hand for rainy days, layoffs, unexpected expenses, emergency travel, the list goes on. Banking your money and having liquid, accessible cash is a smart way to go. Finally, and this is not something U.S. immigrants can do so much as understand and digest, immigration officers and consulates have vast discretion over whether to issue visas. Yes, even to U.S. citizens. Although the clickbaity articles that inspired me to write this make it seem so, U.S. citizens are not entitled to emigrate anywhere. Even if you meet all the eligibility requirements and even exceed them, a sovereign nation has no obligation to accept your visa application and let you in the country. We're not talking about asylum claims here. I suspect that the egregious entitlement that U.S. citizens notoriously exhibit will lead to more denials, even as visa applications by U.S. citizens increase. Understanding this and acting accordingly at meetings with the consulate will greatly improve your chances of being approved, assuming you meet other criteria. Consulate officers hold your future in their hands. Best to approach with humility and gratitude for them considering your application. Considering is all they're required to do. That's the end. I want to make a few comments because we are now 6 months post this article. As I predicted, it's getting harder for people to get visas outside of the United States. Mexico, for example, each Mexican consulate office in the United States operates differently and actually has different requirements within a particular range, but different income and asset requirements around economic solvency visas, whether it be temporary residency or permanent residency, those visas that are centered on the idea that a person has enough income earned from outside of the country or enough savings in their already existing bank accounts that they've been holding for over a year. What has been happening is that some of the consulates are actually requiring both things. So whereas the technical guidance from the migration offices states that a person can qualify for temporary residency based on income thresholds being met or savings thresholds being met, some consulates are requesting both and requiring both. And to my point, my final point of the article, they are entitled to do that. Although you may meet a minimum eligibility threshold, that is not an automatic in. So they've been asking for more. And my sense is that this is in response to the overwhelming number of applications they've been getting from people in the U.S. So that's one point. The other point about staying out of trouble is one that I really want to flag, especially now that we are seeing criminals get pardoned and walk free, and we are seeing people become criminalized for doing things that are not even illegal. I wrote about this and I talk about this, and it's a very, very stark and scary reality that criminalization is increasingly being levied at people at the whim of the government, and politically motivated, racially motivated, all of that. And so the first point about staying out of trouble is really, really important. If you are thinking about applying for a visa in a foreign country, you need to really, really avoid getting in trouble with the law. In particular, getting arrested and getting convicted of a crime. That's going to be probably the most immediate, or the most, how should I say this? That will probably get you cut the quickest from a line for people who are attempting to obtain visas for residency outside of the country. So I'm not going to tell people don't go protest. I'm not going to tell people, hide in their homes. But I will just say that if you have a serious plan to emigrate, and, in the next few months or at any time, at any point, understand that you will very likely be required to submit a criminal background check. And if something shows up on that check, that it could immediately disqualify you from being able to obtain a visa. Okay. So yeah. And this is really just aimed at, these articles they're meaningless and they're useless. And I think they do more harm than good, in the sense that they get people's hopes up about how easy it might be, right? These articles that are like, move right now to, these 5 countries. And first of all, sometimes the countries listed are like countries that nobody really is looking to move to, right? It's particularly if they're looking to get away from political persecution. Going to an Eastern European country that's hyper far right and, just as, if not more, fascist in its tendencies as the United States, it's not particularly useful. But in addition to that, they give misinformation. I've seen an article not long ago that characterized Mexico as, a place where you can get residency right now. First of all, that's a lie, because there's no such thing as right now. You have to apply. You have to get an appointment with the consulate. You have to gather all your documentation. You have to go to your appointment, get approval. Depending on the consulate that you go to, you may be issued a visa, the next day, or the same day, or it could take a couple weeks. In any case, all you get is a visa, and that you have to actually travel to Mexico and get that visa converted into actual legal residency. So the idea that you could do anything right now is just ridiculous and a lie. And it irritates me. It irritates me because I think people get their hopes up and then they come to people like me to get it done. Not get it done because I don't process immigration paperwork. But they come to me to get advice on how to actually put things into action. And I am the one that has to tell them, well, actually, you don't qualify because of this, or, you may qualify, but you have X, Y, and Z working against you. Just the practical and logistical realities of getting an appointment at a Mexican consulate near someone's home, particularly if they live in a major city and the consulates are backed up. It just doesn't take into account the reality, and this is not specific to Mexico. I'm just talking about it because it comes up a lot. So, yeah, I wrote this for the reality check. It's, immigration is absolutely achievable, or I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you from Mexico right now. Nevertheless, it is not easy, and there are barriers, and I just want people to be clear-eyed about this because preparation for immigration includes mental preparation, and you have to mentally prepare yourself for the fact that it's going to be hard, and there's going to be a lot of tasks that are frustrating and annoying and difficult, and there are going to be costs, and there are going to be sacrifices, and in the end, for most people that I speak to, it's absolutely worth it. But during the process of going through it and like evaluating whether you can and then doing all the things that need to be done, it's a big lift. It's a big lift. It's stressful. It's exhausting. It's expensive. And I still think it's something that a lot of people should do. So I will stop bloviating here and just say, be clear-eyed, talk to people who have really done it. Talk to people who have done it, Don't talk to people who have done it and who are not trying to get you to go to one particular country or get you to subscribe to their thing. And I say that knowing that I also have paid subscriptions. But, talk to people who have done it, and really you're going to have to gird yourself for an intensive process. But it's still worth it. All right. With that, I will part and wish everyone safe and sane day, week, month, and cuídate.